and welcome to class. I'm Lauren Mitchell. This is English 510. We're at Grand Canyon University, and this is the introductory class in a unit devoted to the study of James Joyce's short story, Araby. And we'll start with just a little bit of information on Mr. Joyce himself. And there, that photograph to the left, that you would say, oh, it's from his younger days. Well, actually, that's 1904. He's a debonair character, isn't he? And that is the year that he wrote Araby, as well as Dubliners, the collection of short stories from which Araby is taken. And then we see him in that small photograph in the pork pie hat, which he often wore and is known for. And of course, he's older in that one. And then above that, you'll see him wearing an eye patch, which, in spite of the fact that it looks cool, it was indicative of a malady. He suffered from glaucoma and inflammation of his iris, and so I'm sure that he preferred not to have to wear the eye patch. And then we just have a stylized kind of cartoon version of him there in the streets of Dublin, where he was born, by the way, the oldest of 10 children, and his family was what we might call bougie Catholic. And here we see, this is a statue of James Joyce in modern-day Dublin, and that's courtesy of The Guardian, which, by the way, is a fine newspaper, and offers free subscriptions if you want to check it out. But you can see there, it's nice, and I'm not saying the city doesn't have any bad parts, but this is in stark contrast to the Dublin that James Joyce would have known. Dublin in the late 1880s and at the turn of the century was what one observer has called a declining second-rate ex-capital that was fading into a less than picturesque obscurity. How's that? With the notable exception, perhaps, of the Guinness Brewery. Joyce's family was part of the urban poverty that, the reflection of the social and economic decline that was Dublin at the time. They didn't have a lot of money. They moved around a lot. His dad was a drinker and apparently often in debt. But Joyce, being the firstborn, was afforded some opportunities and luxuries that apparently the other children weren't. And one of those meant that he went to, at age 6, he was enrolled in a private boarding school. So he got a good education. Later he went to another Jesuit Catholic-related school and then ended up at University College here. Again, a Jesuit institution. And he had at some point there, probably as the second school along the way, he had been recognized. His talent as a writer began to shine forth. While at University College in Dublin, he met himself a Galway gal, as they say. And now he didn't marry her at the time, but things being what they were, social mores being what they were at the time, is he couldn't live in Dublin with her unless they were married. So when his mother died in 1904, he left Ireland, and he and Nora Barnacle traveled Europe, living in different in Italy and a couple other countries as well. I think spent some time in Paris. But here we see Nora. Look at the picture on the left with his eye. They're looking all like Bonnie and Clyde almost there, aren't they? And she seems to have been quite the fashionable young lady. And in the upper left there we have a photo of her in her elder years. They did marry later on, I think in 1931. And that was so that if or when James Joyce died, that she wouldn't be left destitute. They didn't, I should explain, they didn't believe in the institution of marriage. These artists and how eccentric they are. Now, when he and Nora left Dublin in 1904, that's when he did his first initial writing. That's when he wrote Araby, which was one of 15 short stories included in his collection Dubliners, which was, as you can guess, short stories about people from Dublin. And actually, these short stories follow, like 3 of them are about a young prepubescent boy, and then a young man, and then a man in adult public life, although it's different characters. And Again, those were written as early as 1904. They weren't published until 1914, interestingly enough. It is, Dubliners is, to quote one reviewer, emphatically autobiographical, as she puts it, and such things as the young man in our Araby story lives on North Richmond Street, as did James Joyce. The young fellow, the character in our Araby story, attends the Christian Brothers School, as did James Joyce. And the young fellow in the story had an irresponsible father who drank too much and stayed in debt, as did James Joyce. So that's autobiographical if there ever were. Joyce is, of course, also the author of Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, about the fellow named Stephen Dedalus, as well as Ulysses. Both of these are revered as masterpieces of modern literature, as is Joyce himself, as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, modern writer. Now, here's the middle poster. There is an actual poster advertising the Araby Bazaar in Dublin. That was an actual event, and I think it's still going on. It was up until the 70s, but it was to raise money for a like Sisters of Mercy Hospital, which is how they were funded back then. But take a look at the poster there. Now, you know, to a young fellow in the urban decay of Dublin, what do you see there? An exotic Arabian, the Sheik of Araby, riding on a camel through the deserts. That's not something you'd see on the cobblestone streets of Dublin every day, is it? So this was a play. You know, what does that represent, especially in the mind of a young man? Anyway, I just thought it's cool. That's actual. Look, that one's in 1894. And the mysterious Arabian riding on the camel is an excellent segue into this section, which is the part where we look at literary criticism and critique. And here you see a little bit of word art of some of the things that we're going to be looking at. In fact, more specifically, the elements of a short story. Now, some say that there are 7 elements or 5 elements or 10, but we're not going to get hung up on that. These are the ones that I put down for us. Point of view, who's speaking? Is it first person, second person, third person? Is the speaker reliable? Is the speaker intelligent? Does the speaker understand what's going on? What about setting and place? There's a lot in, just even though it's a short story, there's a lot about descriptive words about where this story takes place, the setting, the themes. What are the themes of this? Now, you know, you were assigned to read this before class today, and I hope everyone did. If you didn't, do it now. Do it tonight before we meet again. But the themes, especially, I don't want to give away too much here or steal anyone's thunder from our presentations the next time we meet. But isolation and loneliness, themes, transformation. They say that they call it the arc, the character arc. Does our character change? Does he emerge a different lad than when we are introduced to him? And speaking of characters, who are the characters? There's more than just one. Who are the other ones? Tell a little bit about each one. Try to learn a little bit about each one. Tone, is it happy? Is it carefree? I don't think it is. And you probably don't either if you read it. The plot, this is a basic one. Start with that. What happens? What goes on? Yes. And in conflict, they say that that there are, consider the conflicts, man versus self, right? Man versus man versus society or power structure, man versus nature, man versus technology. But, very seldom will you, in fact, perhaps never will you see a piece of literature or even a film that, prose. And what is prose, by the way? It's anything that's not poetry. but very seldom when you see one that doesn't have conflict at the base of it. What would, think about a Rambo movie. What if he didn't choose to go rescue the people in the jungle? There would be no movie, right? Or if the hero decides to stay home or not break out of jail or whatever the conflict would be, there's not going to be a story there. And of course, that's what we're into here, is storytelling with a purpose. Let's see here. Themes also. And again, I don't want to give away too much here. I want you to do your own homework, but it's obvious. God and religion. What kind of symbolism are we dealing with here? These and other things are what we will look at and think about as we begin our literary criticism, critique, and review of James Joyce's Araby. Okay, what we're going to do is I'm going to divide the class into 6 groups of 4. That's maybe it depends on if someone's absent or whatever, but there might be 5 people in one of the groups, but whatever, we're not going to worry about that. Each group is going to be in charge of doing a presentation, is telling the rest of us about one of the elements of the short story. Group 1, you're going to be characters and point of view. Group 2, you're only back up, characters and point of view. So, tell us who the characters are. And don't just name them off and then slide on by, but, tell us what you know about them or what you can have inferred about them. Give us some insight to their character. How's that? Number 2 is plot. What happens over what period of time? Summary of that with the pertinent details. Fine. Group 3, setting and place, is the boy's house, the block he lives on, the school, Dublin at the time. Fine. Group 4, this is rich symbolism. The symbolism of Araby, the event, the bazaar that he goes to, the symbolism of Mangit's sister, of the priest's books that he leaves in the house where the young lad lives. Number 5, which is close to 4, but it's just so pregnant with themes. It's with inside itself that it deserves its own category. But God and religion. And group 6, the epiphanies, the takeaways, the moral of the story, the transformation. Does our boy change? What does he learn? And they say that there are many reviewers say that final line of Araby is one of the most confounding ever written. But you can get a handle on it if you think about it. Now, let's take a look at that. But before we do, let me reiterate, each group is going to give a presentation. Each member participates. Nobody gets to sit in the corner and be quiet. Everyone has to do something. If you want to read from your notes, that's fine. If you want to give a speech like Hamlet and Shakespeare, recite it from memory, you can do that. If you want to use the overhead projector, if you want to use my computer and display an image on the board or on the screen, you can do that as well. You can bring props. You can do a skit. You can refer us to, you can upload a video, PowerPoint on YouTube, or there's many different ways to do this, and you're free to experiment and have fun. You're in charge, like it says right there. Okay. Yes, sources. As far as sources, obviously you're going to use our text, Norton Introduction to Literature. I've got a couple of links here, and by the way, this PowerPoint is going to be available. It is available at our class website. So when you get there, if you care to, you can click on those links and check out just a couple of these sources that I've supplied. And please do your own. There's plenty out there. I watched it just while I was having lunch today. I watched a couple of YouTube brief videos. They were both less than 10 minutes on Araby and symbolism, on the history of James Joyce in Dublin. There's so much material out there. So don't sell yourself short. Load yourself up well for our presentations. Now, whichever group you're in, whether you're doing plot or characters or symbolism, you're going to begin by reading it again. And this time you're going to do a close reading. And if you remember our study of poetry in Emily Dickinson's I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died, you're going to do it the same way. This short story is not so long that you can't read and annotate or closely read the whole thing. If, however, you don't feel like you can tackle that, at least do the passages that apply to whatever it is your group is presenting on. Maybe it's place, then look at every passage that is describing the place where they lived. In fact, let's take a look at one of those, and maybe that'll help. Now, if you were doing a close reading of this passage, this, by the way, is the opening passage of the book, is you're going to look at blind. Look at that. Blind. North Richmond Street being blind, so it's quiet. There's Christian Brothers. When it sets the children free, who gets set free? Prisoners? It implies that they were trapped or caged. Look here, an uninhabited house. That house is empty. 2 stories stood at the, there's that blind again. Detached from its neighbors. So we're not getting a real friendly vibe here, are we? In a square ground. The other houses of the street, conscious of decent lives within them, not great, not wretched, decent lives within them, gazed at one another with brown. It's not a very exciting color, is it? It's drab. Imperturbable faces. Unexcited, incapable of expressing emotion. What does that tell us about this place? Now, likewise, here's some passages just kind of squashed together. They appear at different parts in the story, but about Mangan's sister, the little girl that he has the crush on, that he's infatuated with. And I'm not going to read this whole thing, but look here. The light, her dress swung. You know, when I first read this, I almost thought that he was going to be, sort of like a little guy lusting after her, but it's so not that. Her name, strange prayers and praises. That's clearly religious language. Confused adoration. Who do we adore? The adoration of the Magi. We adore. But my body was like a harp, and her were like fingers running upon the way. I pressed the palms of my hands together until they trembled, murmuring, "Oh, what do you do with your hands pressed together? You pray." So, who's he thinking about here? Who's he relating her to? And I don't think I'm giving away anything here, but she's clearly being set up as a figure, as a Virgin Mary figure. And whoever's doing characters or themes, if you end up in a group looking at those things, you just see how so much of the short story is about darkness, and the parts about this young lady, unnamed young lady, by the way, is she's always described in terms of light, and the effect upon the young fellow is. I would say almost religious, but I believe it is religious. And another interesting fact is that the name of the short story, you would think it would be her name, the young girl's name. She goes unnamed, and it's named for a place. Why is that, and what place is that? Okay, once again, this is a little last, a few more tidbits about the assignment. Is due next class. I have a handout. You're going to get a handout from me explaining everything in detail and in writing. That includes the rubric of what you're going to be graded on. And as I mentioned, the PowerPoint's available if you want to go take a look at it. And for the final class, and oh, by the way, the presentation is going to take up the whole class next time, right? And then we'll meet once more after that. That'll be our final class. And it's not movie night, but it's a movie class. and we're going to watch the 1990 film, which is excellent, and it's not long. Don't even sigh already like, oh my gosh, it's 21 minutes. That's going to leave us plenty of time to do a little reflection writing at the end of class, and that's going to be a grade as well. But look, unless you're just a knot on a log and have gotten nothing out of this, then you're going to earn full points. If you're smart and have done your homework, and I know that you are and will have, then you're going to be fine with that. But it's just going to ask you, it's going to ask you to spend 5 or 10 minutes writing. What have you learned from your time spent with James Joyce and Araby and your fellow learners and me over the past week? And if you're interested, here's the references, here's the sources that I use putting this thing together. You're welcome to go check them out if you want to, but again, feel free to find your own. But if you're interested, there they are. All right, if you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me, and I'll see you in class.